Ahoy, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's the BBC Spews live. It's the 16th of January 2023. How are you doing? Plenty of news to discuss, including the fact we've got a serial rapist on the Met Police. Who would have thought it? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've always thought the Metropolitan Police are a bastion of professionalism and integrity. Or not, if you're not mental. Who's in? Plenty of you. All right, Davey Woods in, Ian Brown, Ginger Mongoose, Mr. Parcels, Craig Arbeiter, Ragnar, and Davey Parker are in now then, lads. Alan Parker, Mr. Maximum, Henry Prince of Wales, Doug Sawyers, Rob Centre, Scout Obi's in, the only Scouser I've got any time for. Whiskey Straight, Al Mark Thompson, JVPA, Samuel L. Saxon, Mike K, thank you for moderating, New Fish, Grupp Führer, Mick 9879, Mike 52, Anita. Hello everyone, how are you doing? Right. So there's been a few interesting developments over the weekend, hasn't there? For those of you that haven't been paying particular attention to the news, those of you that have got a life and are out enjoying yourselves, well done. Well done. I didn't have a single pint this weekend. So a bit shit in it. We've sent more money to Ukraine, which is always good, right? I love British plumbers and bricklayers and bus drivers and welders grafting to send money to buy bombs. To buy some bombs, and also to line the pockets of people like Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak, who get paybacks from all of the arms companies. And this isn't a conspiracy theory because we know it. We've seen the transcripts, we've seen the Twitter leaks, we've seen the FBI files and the CIA documents leaked by Matt Taibbi, and we know that American politicians personally profit, i.e. literally take money into their bank accounts from gigantic corporations like Lockheed, Boeing and Raytheon, who send it to them because they buy bombs. They make the taxpayers buy bombs. So brilliant. Also, you know it's fucked up because I'm a bootneck. You would never think a bootneck is going to be sounding like some sort of like peace man, far out dude, hippie type. But we live in such a fucked up world nowadays, and we are so sorely led by our degenerate, corrupt leaders that I actually come across as being like a bit of a hippie. Like I'm 100% anti-war and I never agree with any form of intervention by the armed forces. And that's not the case. But when you know for a fact that all of your leaders are bought and paid for in a war where it appears that the only sensible option is to not take anybody's side, I end up sounding like some sort of commie pinko lefty who is like, you know, meat is murder, man. One of those types. And I'm not at all. Like, I genuinely think sometimes there is an excuse for military interventionism. A lot of people get this wrong because a lot of people love gobbing off about things they have no understanding about. A good example is Afghanistan versus Iraq, right? Because I've had this out with loads of ignorant twats. Because as soon as you sit in a pub, obviously the bootneck's quite verbose and is happy to have stand-up arguments with strangers in taverns. As soon as you start talking about a war, people start gobbing off about it. And within 60 seconds, you can tell whether or not somebody knows what they're talking about. And as I've always said, I don't claim to be some sort of visionary genius. But what I don't do is try and talk as if I'm an expert on a subject that I know nothing about. And the wars are a really good one because usually within 60 seconds, somebody will say, we only went to Afghanistan for the oil. Right. And you just go, really? You know what I mean? Iraq, we went to for money and oil. Afghanistan's a fucking dust bowl. They've got mineral reserves, but they don't have massive quantities of oil. Iraq, they do, which is why my unit's primary mission during the invasion, Operation Iraqi Freedom, freedom via the means of explosive ordnance. Our primary mission was to go in and secure the oil pipelines. The 6 primary GOSPs on the Al-Faw Peninsula was exactly what we got sent for. And it was only after we'd secured those 6 pipelines that we got on the net, informed the Americans they were all secure, and then the Americans bombed the shit out of them. Obviously, the Iraq war was for profit, for Halliburton and for oil, but Afghanistan wasn't. And after 9/11 went down, I think any one of us could see there was a plausible reason for removing the Taliban. I don't think anyone who, with any sense, would say, even if you're against it, you could say, okay, I understand where the argument comes from. Because Osama bin Laden was sheltered and provided financial and emotional support by the fucking Taliban. They helped him in tons of ways, logistics. When I say emotional, I don't mean the hold in his hand when he's having a bad day. I mean, they're providing him with everything he needs, whether it's manpower, logistics, everything he needs, and money. So there's understandable reasons why we might partake in a military endeavor in somewhere like Afghanistan. I'd argue that it should have been a rip and run, right? And we should have bombed the fucking shit out of them, used some SF tip of the spear type military maneuvers on the ground, and then got the fuck out rather than stay there for 25 years. But I'm not against the idea of a military intervention. I'm against the idea of a stupid military intervention where it appears to be the waters are so muddy that you don't know who's on your fucking side. And that's what's going on in Ukraine. So I still do not understand why it's, well, I do understand. It's because it's profiting the politicians. But I don't understand why the general public are not up in arms about Ukraine. Is it literally going to be for the next 10 years, we're just going to keep giving money to Ukraine and our politicians? Because that's how long they'll string it on for. They had a peace deal worked out and they fucked it off. So are we just going to do that forever? Is that the crack? I think it's a shit idea, personally, but what do I know? So that's a fucking piss take. It's Italy's most wanted mafia boss has been arrested in Sicily. I don't know why this is the #1 headline on the BBC News today. But yeah, whippy fucking do. These type of things are pointless, aren't they? Because you can see by all these drug epidemics that when you get the top man, nothing changes. Someone else just steps in to fill the boots. So I don't see why that's the biggest story of the day. Yeah, there we go. That's the top headline on BBC.com today. What else have we got? There's the old serial rapist copper. Again, understandable, isn't it? Because, as I've said, for about the last 5 years, we have gutted our police departments in the last 25 years. Standards went through the floor. I'm not saying we should still have a fucking height requirement, yeah? Maybe we should, though, considering how many pot-bellied midgets there are wandering around London in a uniform. But fuck me. We need accountability and we need standards for the police. Actually, that's a bit small, isn't it? Let me blow it up. Yeah, Metropolitan Police Officer used his role to put fear into his victims, has admitted dozens of rapes against 12 women. Fuck me. Yeah, of course, this is what we're getting from our police officers because we've got no standards anymore. We haven't got any standards. If I've talked about this before, right? When you learn something about the military, you know which units are elite. It's not a coincidence that even civvies know that the Royal Marines and the Parachute Regiment are elite compared to the rest of the line infantry and Navy personnel. Because if you get 100 people turn out to try and join them, there is a massive training bleed, i.e., if 100 lads turn up down at Lympstone for a PRMC, that's a potential Royal Marines course. When I went, there was about 70, and I think about 20 passed. So they were separating the wheat from the chaff straight away. And to be allowed to go to it, you've got to pass. You've got to do an intelligence test. You've got to do a basic fitness test with a bleep test, a few other little things. So they're already starting to separate the wheat from the chaff. Then you go down to Lympstone. Then you get beasted for a week. Then you strip 70 down to 20. And then when you get enough lads from those post-PRMC groups, let's say another 60, so you'll do three PRMCs, you'll get about 60 lads. Those 60 lads then join the corps. And then of the 60 that join actually join week 1, day 1, you probably get about 20 pass out again. So there's a massive training bleed from random 20-year-old lad in the street down to Bootneck with a green beret on his head. Massive training bleed, right? Because you might get 10 walk-in the careers officer want to do it, and only 7 of them pass the tests. And then from the 7, then you take all of them down for a PRMC, and of them you might only get 2. And then out the 2 that join, you might only get 1. But the police, now, my mate, who will remain unnamed, but one of my many sources, now I've got a medium-sized YouTube channel, was a detective in the Metropolitan Police. Personal friend of mine, known him for years. It was a Metropolitan Police detective. He only lasted about 3 years and he quit because he couldn't believe how bad it was. And being as he's my age and he's not financially fucking embarrassed, he's not the type of bloke who's trapped. Blokes who are financially embarrassed get trapped in a job, don't they? That's why I'm no longer a bootneck, a serving bootneck. Because I've never been financially embarrassed. I save my money. I'm not a degenerate addict or gambler, and I've always got a bit of money in my arse pocket. So when it became obvious to me that they were treating the enemy better than their own, I left in disgust. And it is, I'll talk about that briefly, because a lot of people ask me questions about my military career, because I don't talk about it too much. Based Welsh checking in. Welcome, Stevie Jones. A Welshman called Jones? Fuck off, I'm not having that. No, they're all called fucking Ikmari Akbadunga Wankbo, aren't they, in Wales these days? It's actually a tragedy that I left the Corps, because anybody who knows the military will know that the vast majority of people join for the minimum. They join and they find it's all right, but they either want to start a family, they scratch the itch they have when they're a young lad, and then they want to start a family, they want to have children, they want to spend more time with their wives. It's not used, they're not suited to being on the road all the time. The vast majority of people that join the military are in for less than 7 years, right? So most people join up, do 4.5, 5, 6, and then they're out. Once you get past 7, you're doing life. You're a pension trap, you're a lifer, you love the job. I love the job. I was in for nearly 10. I did 5 operational deployments. I enjoyed the job. I'd been promoted. I was fucking set. And then on my 5th tour, when I was serving as the continuation NCO for so I went out early. Spent about 6 weeks on the ground in Kajaki, Helmand Province, which was advanced to contact. It was probably the diciest place to be in Afghanistan. We were doing advanced to contact patrols, pushing the forward lines of enemy troops in Helmand Province. 9 out of 10 times we went out on the ground, we got in a firefight with the Taliban, right? And that was the tour when I spat my dummy out, because unfortunately, even though I was looking at being a lifer, because I love the job. I love the camaraderie. I love the physicality. I relish the discipline because, again, I'm a focused person. I'm not fucking all over the place. I liked it. So, unfortunately, I grew up, because as you mature and you get older, you start thinking about politics, don't you? And when I was 23, 24, 25, 26, I loved the job. Always was convinced we had the right of it. Was convinced that anybody I pointed my rifle at fucking deserved a third eye, right? I was convinced we were the good guys. I thought the government had our backs. I had a sense of purpose and a sense of discipline and a sense of community. I loved everything about the job. And then it became obvious to me on my last tour that brigade, this was the army, because when I went with 40 Commando, we were attached to an army brigade. Brigade cared more about the lives of the enemy than they did for us. We were in Kajaki in Helmand Province, and the word came down from above that we were no longer allowed to shoot the enemy if they had engaged us in a firefight and ventilated a couple of our blokes. Apparently, if they engaged us and then threw the gun and ran off, so it was like a shoot and scoot, we were told we were no longer allowed to shoot them because the second they had dropped the weapon, even if they'd just killed one of our men, they were no longer a direct threat to life. And that made me think, so are these fucking cunts not even interested in our safety at all then? And then it came down that when they're digging IEDs and mines in the middle of the night, you're no longer allowed to shoot them either. We had guys on the peaks, snipers, and we had indirect fire set up. We had mortars, fucking heavy weapons, all sorts of stuff, right? Then we were told when they're digging in mines and IEDs, you're not allowed to shoot them either because they're not a direct threat to anybody's life. And my boss was a major in the Corps. Major Duncan Manning was his name. I think he's working in the oil industry now. He said, they're not digging for carrots, are they? There's no civilians round here. The local town was completely abandoned because of all the fighting. This is a ludicrous diktat. And they said, we don't fucking care. And my job as the Conco was to try and mark on our map of the area of operations everywhere we'd seen anybody digging in mines or explosive devices. And I would mark and hash them out on my big, massive map on my wall, on my office wall. And I'd mark every single area where I thought we could reasonably expect it to be mines or IEDs set up. And over the course of about 7 or 8 weeks, when that diktat was passed, and all of a sudden the enemy realised, because they fucking knew, because we used to shoot the bastards and then we stopped. And over about a 7 or 8 week period, the amount of mines and IEDs getting stuck in around the base was staggering. Every night I was getting reports of some here, there's some there, there's some there. It became impossible to avoid them. They tell you not to set patterns, to try and change your pattern of life every time you go out. It's impossible. There's only 2 exits from the fucking fob. And there's only 50 fucking roads to walk down or trails to use. So they just started sticking them everywhere. And then a few weeks later, Dave Marsh and John Thornton both got killed by IEDs, rolled the vehicle over a fucking anti-tank mine, I think they dug in. And I was fuming because I viewed it quite rightly, and my opinion hasn't changed in my old age, that those 2 men were murdered, not because of the actions of the Taliban. Predominantly, they were killed because of the actions of the state. The British government was complicit in the deaths of those 2 men. And I left in disgust 6 months later. And it was a prophetic decision because about a year after that, Sergeant Alexander Blackman, Marine A from the famous trial, was arrested for murder, for killing a Taliban fighter. And when I heard that story, I'm a civvy at this point, and I'm reading the paper, and I go, fucking hell, they've arrested a bloke. Like, of course they have, because I was in a bad mood about it. I was always ranting about it. Of course they've arrested a bloke for killing an Afghan. But I at least read, when I saw murder, I assumed he'd killed a civilian. So when I read the account that he was responding, the troops were fired upon first by a Taliban fighter. It was a gunman. It wasn't a civilian. They then returned fire, hit him, and then cleared the position, pushed through, as they do, pushed through the compound, found him. He was critically injured and full of holes anyway. And Alexander Blackman said, fucking hell, lads, there's no point in wasting an FFD on this twat, and put a bullet in his head, right? Now, again, because I'm not a wanker, that action was unacceptable because it's not professional. Let me have a cup of tea. I've been talking for a long time. It's not professional behaving that way. I'm not advocating Sergeant Blackman's moral lapse whilst fighting in a combat zone. But people like that, if the scene is secure and you are under no threat, you should correctly attempt to administer first aid. Alexander Blackman knows this when he's in the cold light of day and he's not wound up, because there's numerous things you can do with that. If you successfully treat him and have him back in custody, you can get valuable information from people like that. I'm not stupid enough. Royal Marines aren't stupid enough to not know this. It's got to be more above you've got to have more to your arsenal than simply the ability to straddle the battlefield like a mighty colossus and have balls like coconuts, which all bootnecks do, right? But you've got to be more than a blunt instrument. It's all well and good being extremely good at carrying out wonderfully gratifying acts of fucking horrific violence against horrible cunts that totally deserve it. It's all well and good doing that. But you do need to follow the rules. You do learn in the military that there's always a reason why you do things, and it's logical and it makes sense. And when you're a young lad, you always think of ways to cheat, and you always think of ways to do things that'll be better. And when you learn as you mature that the military is made up of hundreds of thousands of people, and there's cleverer people than you in charge. So if they think of something clever and tell you this is how it needs to work, you do understand the logic there. So the reason they tell you to administer first aid to a dying combatant if there is no threat to your own safety is for all of those reasons. There might be intelligence boys might want to have a word with them. Maybe they can fucking turn them and have them do something. Maybe they'll glean a lot of intelligence from it, whatever. So you don't just murder an injured fighter. But at worst, having a moral lapse and ventilating a fucking stone cold killer who's personally murdered your friends, at worst, that would be court-martial. And then if you were pushing for it in a civil courtroom, it would be something like manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. And at worst, you'd be looking at about 3 years in the nick, right? Everybody knows this. For the fucking hell, in France, if you walk in and your missus is getting drilled by your next door neighbour, you don't get jailed for caving his head in because they go, hey, it is love, mon ami. Hey. And they're all filthy sexual deviant scum. We know about crimes of passion. For a man in a war zone who's got his dead comrades' blood on his uniform, fighting in a grueling, mentally challenging environment, to lose his temper and shoot a stone cold killer armed with a firearm, for it to be called murder instantly and to have him tried for murder is a standard that no civilian would ever get. So far from having leeway, they stitch you up. You're held to a standard that is not as required from a civilian. Because seriously, you've just heard the entirety of that story, the position he was put in and the situation he was fighting in. If you walked into your local pub and as you walked through the door, a big fucking Jamaican yardie was punching your wife's face in, right? So you lost your temper and you stabbed him in the neck with a broken bottle and he dropped down dead. They would not do you for murder because there's extenuating circumstances. It wouldn't happen. You might get done for manslaughter, GBH, whatever. But you would not get done for murder. But that man was fucking stitched up, put all over the fucking news and called a murderer and tried for murder. And it was only after a massive public hubbub was it expunged, and then he was given manslaughter, the original charge, which anybody with a hole in their arse knew should have been the original charge in the first place. And then he was let out for time served. So the whole thing was a shambles. And I was a civilian at this point because I'd already seen it coming. So the whole debacle of Al Blackman, I saw coming fucking 18 months before it. And I left the Corps in disgust. And at the time, I was angry because I loved the job. I'd been in for years. I fucking knew everyone. I knew I had hundreds of good mates at all 3 commando units. I'd fucking loved the job. And I thought I was going to do 22 years, tap 3, see you later. And because that was taken from me, I was extremely angry and bitter and twisted about it. And now I'm an old bastard. Now it's not so bad. And it's like when someone dies. You know what I mean? When you're upset, when someone close to you dies, it's a horrible lump in your throat, and it really tears at you for a long time. But when you get over it, because time does heal all wounds, we're not fucking limp-wristed soy boys in this channel. Time heals all wounds, and then you start thinking of the good things, don't you? Well, my mum died, and for a year it was raw, and then you start thinking of the nice times you had together and the good memories, and then you smile. It doesn't feel as bad. You don't think, fucking hell, it's awful, this shit. You start to remember the nice things, and you go, oh, that's good. That's how normal humans' grieving process works. So I was angry about it for a long time, and now I'm not. Now I remember the good things, and I'm not sour about it. But seriously, that fucking hell debacle seriously made me angry. I should have been a careerist, and I didn't, because the British government was obviously more worried about the Taliban than their own people. And lo and behold, 10 years later, look at the nation we live in. Look at the nation we live in. If you have paid taxes your whole fucking life, and your parents paid taxes the whole life, and your grandparents paid the taxes the whole life, but some convict comes over in the back of a tomato wagon, he gets treated better than you do. If you lose your job and you're on the dole, the fucking phoning you every week, if you've worked your whole life, my dad ranted about this because he was working as a welder for like 12 years. Then his company went bankrupt and he's on the door for like 6 weeks. And then they're ringing him every week, get a job, get a job, get a job, get a job. Take your benefits, stop your door, get a job, get a job. Well, I've paid into the system for fucking 20 years. Can I not take a few months off? Get a job, get a job, get a job. But if you come over and you're like Halaru fucking Akbar with a machete outside a fucking Jewish supermarket, what do? Put you up in a fucking Hilton and make sure you get 3 squares a meal. 3 squares a meal, 3 squares a day. It's an absolute pile of shit. And this bollocks is just an extension of the pure degeneracy and demise of our entire society. The police don't have any standards, so we're employing sex pests and little fat midgets who couldn't catch a fucking coal, let alone a burglar, right? We used to have a height standard. Used to have to be like 6 foot tall and physically fit. My mate told me when he passed out with the Metropolitan Police, it was like fucking, I don't know, if you went down the line, a rugby game, and you see all these fucking mutant faces, it's them, but transposed onto the bodies of little fat dwarfs. And he said his pass out was unbelievable when he got badged as a copper. He said he was literally the only bloke there who was, over 5'8" and wasn't fucking obese. It was just a freak show. He showed me some photographs. He met Cressida Dickhead when he got his badge. And he showed me some of the photographs from his pass-out parade, and I shit you not, it was absolute freak show. The bloke stood next to him was like an aborted Indian fetus, like that, with his tit helmet on. He hasn't got the neck strength to hold his fucking helmet up. That's what our coppers look like now. Little fat roller copper, yeah, like Stephen Hawking from fucking Karachi. That's top recruit. Like mutants. The fucking everything is sick. Just look at the state of the UK. The whole lot. Like the teachers are fucked. The coppers are fucked. The politicians are all scub. Everyone is fucked. Nothing works. You can't get a doctor's appointment. You can't get a dentist appointment. You can't find a school. You can't buy a house. And we are importing thousands of people every week. Fuck it, we can afford it. We can't. When you see a manky old shitty tramp sat in a bus shelter covered in piss going, got any change, mate? He's got more money than the British government. That's not even hyperbole. Just looking up, Google it. Because he's on zero. These fucking smackheads you see in Borough, diggers, picking on everything. I hate smackheads. I was having this out with my missus the other day because we were talking about smackheads because we were watching The Wire. I was like, I hate them. And she was like, oh, why do you hate them? Don't you feel some sympathy for them, like some pity? No, I hate them. You can't grow up in Middlesbrough and deal with smackheads everywhere you fucking go and not despise them. I hate them. I hate them for the weakness. If they've had a bad life, I do understand it, but I still hate them. I hate them for the weakness. I hate them for the fact that I have to watch them shitting on the back of the bus when I'm trying to go to work. I hate seeing them propping up the fucking counter in Tesco going, hey man, have you got a pound, mate? I hate them. I hate them. Right? And they're the fucking, you see them everywhere. There's nothing works in the UK. Glue sniffers. My old man still calls them all glue sniffers, which is funny because I've told him, in 2023, glue isn't the drug of choice, Dad. But yeah, it's a good generic term for anybody who's on drugs, a glue sniffer. So I'm repelled by them. I hate them. And you can't move from in Borough. You cannot move. You can't take the dog for a walk without tripping over a smackhead. I'm telling you, everywhere you go, hey, mate, have you got fucking... And he's got eyes like a shithouse rat. I've seen a quality viral video a few months back where there's a smackhead walking through the streets in Borough and he's got his trousers around his ankles and he's holding a can upside down. And he's... in fact, did I show you guys it a few months ago? Anyway, it's fucking quality. And the dad is like me, like flashing because he hates them. And the guy's like, oh, God. And he's like, here, your fucking trousers. Why have you got your trousers around your ankles? Your can's upside down. Your fucking can's upside down, mate. And he's like, what? Because he's totally upside down. The can he's carrying. And he goes, look at the clip of your eyes. You could blindfold you with a fucking shoelace, you could. Which is fucking brilliant. Blindfold you with a shoelace, because that's what the smackheads look like in Borough. They're all wandering around going, fucking here, mate, lend us a pound, yeah, can you? I hate you. Right, and this is it. If you're a digger, sorry, that's Borough slang for a smackhead. If you're a digger, if you're a fucking illegal immigrant, if you're a degenerate sex pest politician, or if you're a woke lefty, you get special treatment. Even the law is fucked up in Britain, isn't it? The law, which used to be sacrosanct, it really is upside down. Like, you've got, basically, if you're a left-wing protester, you get treated like with kid gloves. And if you're a right-wing protester, behaving in the exact same manner, they smash your face in with a baton. Like, that's the way we are. I listened to a video by he who shall not be named, fucking Tony Romo, the other day. And it's true. Like, if someone like him, or Posey Parker, the militant feminist who I like, there's a lot I don't have in common with people like Posey Parker, but I really like people that are very argumentative and that could see me getting on with in a pub, even if I don't agree with them on everything. I like Posey Parker. And she was saying how if someone spits in her face and pushes her over and she rings the police and says, I've just been fucking assaulted, the coppers in England go, oh yeah, sorry, it's terrible, we'll look into this. Who are you? And she says, oh, I'm Posey Parker, the women's rights activist. They go, oh shit, are you the TERF one, the one who's anti-trans? And she goes, yeah. And they're like, well, you shouldn't say bad things then, and fucking hang up on you. Like, seriously, that's the law in the UK. For a fact it is. If Tony Romo gets assaulted by a gang of 10 blokes and they kick him within an inch of his life, and he rings the coppers and go, I'm a bit fucked up, I just got battered by 10 lads, they say, oh yeah, well, you shouldn't say mean things then, should you? And hang up on him. So to me, I don't think anybody who's politically centrist or right of centre should even be paying income tax anymore, because what do you get for your money? What do you get for your money? The reasons the Americans had an American Revolution was because they wanted to get something for the fucking money. Now, granted, I know my history, so I'm not going to go on a tirade about it. I understand both sides of that argument. I understand where the Brits were coming from, right? We paid massive sums of money for the 7 Years' War. The American colonists were the primary beneficiaries of it. They, however, had no representation in Parliament and viewed it as being unfair that they were taking the money off them without representing them, and nobody likes paying the taxes. So I can see both sides of that argument. But you expect something for your money. If you're fucking right-wing in the UK, what do you get for your money? Tell me what you get for your money. The schools are fucked, and you don't want to send your kids to school because they're going to get trained or bummed by a lunatic, purple-haired, militant, fucking man-hating feminist with a cock. So you don't get to use the schools. Fuck off. You can't get a doctor's appointment. See you later. Can't get a dentist appointment. Nah. The roads are all fucked. Right? What else you get for your money? Armed forces? Nah, they're shite. They're just full of soy boys. I could personally fight the fucking modern parachute regiment by myself. I could just bunch my scrotum into a ball and just bat them all around the heads with it like a fucking giant fleshy mace. I wouldn't even need a firearm. So they're shit. You don't get any money. What do you get for your money? Tell me. Your politicians, they don't represent you, so they're not paying for themselves. The bin men don't even empty the fucking bins nowadays. I mean, seriously, what do you get for your money? Everyone should be going on tax strike in England. If you're left wing, keep paying your taxes because you're getting some bang for your buck. But if you're normal, don't pay any money. Just don't pay your fucking taxes. I advocate it's moral to not pay your taxes in the UK because you're paying to be fingered. You're paying for your kids to get diddled. So it's like the BBC. It's immoral to pay for it. Anyway, about this Met copper. Yeah, that's me going off on a tangent. You know, who cares about this copper? I just segue. The stories are just there to serve as neat segues into rants. You must have figured this out by now. Who cares about this fucking copper? There you go. Serial rapist was a copper. Fucking done, Dave. Happy days. Davy Carrick, dirty bastard. Now back to business. Because seriously, that's not even news. Of course they're all serial rapists. The UK is a fucking omni-shambles. It's an omni-shambles. It's fucked. It's fucked. Coppers are cunts. Teachers are cunts. Nurses are cunts. The whole country is a shambles. So this isn't news. This isn't news. And before anyone whinges, obviously I don't mean all of them, some sensible coppers and nurses watch this channel. What I'm saying is there's no standards anymore. We don't have standards for the police. We don't have standards for the military. We'll take anyone. We'll take anyone. It's fucked. The only way to fix it is to get back to basics. Do what we know works. And what do we know works? Getting in a right-wing arsehole who starts hacking and slashing, sacking all of these useless twats. We just need to turn the public sector back into a meritocracy. You need to have standards. If you want to be a copper, you need to be able to run a fucking 9-minute mile, and you need to do a basic fitness test, and you need to do a basic. And again, you don't need to have a college degree. That deep six of that idea. You need to pass a test that we'll come up with for basic mechanical reasoning and common sense and basic numeracy and literacy, and then some hard physical tests. So we want to know that our coppers are tough and strong and physically and mentally robust and can police the fucking streets. And if you do that, you'll get less of this and more of, "Oi, where are you going, Tyrone?" in the cells. Her. Easy. We know how to fix it. And this is the other thing. We know how to fix these problems. If a bootneck like me knows how to fix these problems, you best believe people in the fucking positions of power know how to fix it, but they don't want to do it because the woke twats are in charge. And that's it. I don't know. I don't know where Ragnar is Anglo-Saxon. No idea. But we're fucked. We're fucked. So, yeah, done. That was a nice 40-minute rant when I was just supposed to be talking about the bent copper. Yeah, they're all bent. They're all bent. Anyone got anything else? I've got 5 minutes. I'll do. Anyone got any suggestions? I'll cover a story that gets requested. Put me a fucking link in the comments and I'll do it. It's now better than a good cup of tea. National service, what do you reckon, Bootneck? Well, you see, again, when I was young, I would have balked at the idea of national service. But now I think I've evolved on it. And the youngest generation are so useless and mentally ill that I think we should have some form of national service. Maybe not all joining the military, but I definitely believe that there should be something, you know, like in Scandinavia, where you can basically be paired with some form of government service that suits your talents. You don't all have to join the military, but something from the age of like 18 to 20, there's got to be something sensible we can come up with where we don't have to just leave kids to be feral youths when they're at the worst age for it. Because, you know, 18 to 20, what are you doing? You're not like taking anything out of anybody's life. Do you know what I mean? 18 to 20, it's only 2 years. If you want to do something, well, then do it after. And I feel like it would do more good than harm. The liberal part of my personality doesn't sit well with imposing something like that on national service, but I do think it would do more help than harm. I think there's a lot of people who would massively benefit from it, and the ones who wouldn't benefit from it probably still won't lose out because it's only 2 years. They can go back to doing what they were going to do anyway. I do think on the face of it, I would say, yeah, at this point, I probably agree with it. I certainly don't see it doing any harm. But anyway, fuck it, that'll do us. I'm going to do a video today about the loopy wellness cult because I seen a post on Facebook by The Atlantic. Again, all the magazines that I used to like, they're all woke as well now, which is proof of this takeover by the commies. Because 10 years ago, I used to read The Atlantic, I used to read The Economist, I used to read Time magazine, and they were all right. Interesting. Now, the woke, The Economist is fucking woke. And no woke people are economically literate, but The Economist is woke. Seriously. It's just full of shit now. I knew this when that ginger mog who works for The Economist interviewed Jordan Peterson and just talked pure Shiite Muslim. And it was just woke platitudes. Total bollocks. So they're all shit now. And it was The Atlantic, who I used to like, writing a piece about how Victoria's Secret's so harmful. Why did we ever allow it? And I was like, really? Really? So encouraging women to be slim and athletic and eat healthy is harmful, right? But the wellness cult saying, you do you, girlfriend, be a big, fat, saggy, baggy fucking mess with a head like a fucking wheelie bin. Be a big, fat, human blancmange with more fucking chins than the Chinese phone book. Be that, and then you'll be happy. Then you'll be happy. Of course you will. Of course you will. But so basically, I'm going to make a video about that because I think the wellness cult has made tens of millions of women fucking miserable, suicidal, depressed, crippling anxiety, diabetic, heart disease, fucked. I think the wellness cult has fucked tens of millions of women's lives up. So I'm going to make a video about it. All right, tune in for that. See if I'll get it done today. Who knows? Thanks for watching, everyone. What day is it? Monday. I'll be back Tuesday. Yeah, I'll be back for a live stream tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll line up some actual news stories instead of trying to talk about a copper and then going on a deranged fucking rant for 40 minutes. But yeah, well, it's free, innit? It's free. You don't pay for it. So I'm in charge. Right? Thanks for watching. See you all tomorrow. Toodle fucking pip. Cheers.